My name is Kim Morgan, and I'm the Outreach and Communications Coordinator here at UCL Biochemical Engineering. So, just to let you know, for using the Zoom webinar, you can communicate with us on the panel at any point by typing in the chat. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you can configure us in different ways. You can have us one speaker at a time or see us all together. You can have the chat. You'll also notice there's a Q&A box there, which means that you can ask us questions. It's really great if you use that because it makes it easier for us to deal with any questions that come in. You can also ask them anonymously if there's anything you want to ask. This session is being recorded and there'll be my colleagues in the central team will share a link afterwards that you can watch it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass over to my colleagues one after another. They're going to give a brief introduction to themselves, explain what they do at UCL Biochemical Engineering, and they'll talk about the programs they run. And then we're going to talk more generally about postgraduate taught study here in the department. As I said, we're happy to take your questions at any point. Put them in the Q&A box and we'll come to them. Otherwise, we're just going to go through some of the topics which we know a lot of prospective students ask about the department. So first of all, I'm just going to briefly ask my colleagues to introduce themselves before we go back and then go into a bit more detail. So Rana, Petra, if you'd like to go one after another, and then Darren. So Rana, if you'd like to just introduce yourself.
Yeah. So, afternoon, everyone. My name is Rana Khalife. I'm a lecturer teaching in the Department of Biochemical Engineering. I'm the chair of recruitment, and within the Faculty of Engineering, we have different minors. So I lead one of the minor, which is regenerative medicine. And I'm the program director and admission tutor of one of the masters that we have in our department, which has the longest title, which is commercialization and manufacturing of stem cell and gene therapy. Petra?
Thank you, Rana. Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. Afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Petra Hanga. I am an associate professor in the Department of Biochemical Engineering at UCL. And I'm also the program director and admissions tutor for the MSc in Biochemical Engineering. Yeah, very happy to tell you all about this program. And what makes it really unique and how it can help you, become employable.
So if you just want to unmute yourself, Darren.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Darren Nesbeth. I'm an associate professor of synthetic biology in the department, and I'm the program director for the Masters of Research degree in synthetic biology.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for introducing yourselves. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to have a brief overview of the programs. We're not going to go into too much detail of them because there are the sessions where we can do that, and you can find that online. But Rana, Petra, and Darren are going to talk about the programs they lead, and then we're going to talk very generally. We're going to talk about various aspects of studying a PGT program in the department. So Rana, if you'd like to talk about the manufacturing and commercialization of stem cell and gene therapy, MSc.
Yes. So we've started this MSc program 5 years ago based on many reasons. One of the things is that UCL is leading on clinical trials when it comes to cell and gene therapy. Second, we see a gap when it comes to having graduate students that have bioprocessing background. Not only this, because of the ideology of our department, which is kind of translational research. That means when you have a discovery, we try to translate things into a real life and make it available for everyone and afford it. That's why in this kind of like MSc, we try to implement the interdisciplinary thinking that UCL has it from our spiritual founder, Jeremy Bentham, which is combining different kind of like fields together in one program. So in this program, we really have different kind of topics. For example, we teach the bioprocessing, we teach the biology, we teach the engineering aspect, we teach the commercialization and the business aspect as well as, for example, law, the IP, and the regulation and legislation. What are the regulation that we need to follow before injecting the patient with a treatment, and so on. We're heavily linked to industry. They help us shape the content. What do they want to see in the graduate students once they graduate? They mentor our students, and sometimes they offer research project placement at industry. Petra?
Okay, thanks, Rana. Hello, everyone. So as I said, I am the program director and the admissions tutor for the MSc in Biochemical Engineering. And very similarly to what Rana has said, this is also a program that addresses a need for highly skilled graduates, particularly because all these rapid advancements that have been taking place over the past couple of years in life sciences, there has been this consensus that there is a huge gap in the skills of graduates, particularly when it comes to graduates with the technical skills and knowledge that is relevant to manufacturing. And this is the gap that we are trying to address in the MSc in Biochemical Engineering. What really makes this program very unique is the fact that it is tailored so that both graduates from scientific degrees and also from engineering degrees can join this program and essentially develop all those technical skills and knowledge that is relevant for manufacturing modern products. And these products include a wide range of products, not just biopharmaceuticals, so anything that you can think of that requires a biological element. Cell and gene therapies, it's an example, vaccines as well, but also other applications like biofuels, and more recently foods or novel foods. So there is this need now, and perhaps need is not the right word, but there is this interest now in trying to develop other ways of producing foods in a more sustainable way for the future. So these are the kind of applications that this program will equip you for. And during this program, you will be learning the advanced engineering skills. So you'll be learning things like bioprocess design, bioreactor engineering, particularly if you're coming from a scientific background. You'll also be learning about the state-of-the-art life science techniques. So there are modules that are focused on molecular biology, focused on vaccine development, microfluidics. And there are optional modules where you can actually expand your knowledge by learning more about the essential business, the regulatory knowledge, commercialization as well of these sorts of products. Darren? Darren, you're muted.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Rana and Petra. It's always great to hear about our master's programs in their totality. So I'm the program director for the synthetic biology MRes that's been going since 2010-11 academic year, if I'm correct. And so I taught on the MRes from the very beginning. I'd offered projects, and for the last 3 years now, I've been program director. The original director was our beloved colleague, Professor John Ward, who retired recently. So yeah, so synthetic biology, for those of you that don't know, it's basically a research field in which the overarching aim is to make biology more predictable, modular, and engineerable. So it becomes an engineering discipline, or more of an engineering discipline. And so it's quite appropriate then for the synthetic biology MRes at UCL to sit within the Department of Biochemical Engineering, which literally also has that as a research mission. And we're in an engineering faculty. So the program has four, the 25-26 program has 4 taught courses, but together they only actually represent a third of the overall program. 2/3 of the credit of the program is purely a research project. So UCL has 3 terms and also a summer period for master's programs. So the majority of the taught content is in term 1, and then from term 2 to term 3 we transition to full-time research, and then term 3 in the summer our full-time research activity. So the MRes in the same way that research in general is quite different philosophically from taught courses, there's a lot of skill acquisition through doing. So that's 2/3 of the MRes, which is quite distinct from the proportion of an MSc that involves that kind of mode, and also undergraduate degrees where there's generally a research project just in the final year. So it's going to be quite a departure from most people's undergraduate degree in that it emphasizes skills and developing skills and abilities through doing to a far greater degree than receiving content and then performing well in written assessments. So it's definitely got more in common with doctoral research than with undergraduate taught programs. And again, that's a kind of a new and different challenge that everyone should be aware of and enthused about if they want to take on an MRes as opposed to a program with a greater taught element. So yeah, so that's the MRes in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen so you can see all of our lovely faces a bit better. There we go. That's done. So what we're going to go on to talk about now is the kind of facilities and resources that we have available to our PGT students, and explain a little bit about the difference between UCL East and the Bloomsbury campus. Just give you a bit of context, UCL East was opened a couple of years ago because in central London. We've got a very old building. Also, we've got some very old buildings, and we've built pretty much everything we can, and we can't really change them around because they're listed. So we chose to build on the Olympic site over in Stratford, which means that we've got some fantastic new facilities. But we're also very lucky in our department to have a whole building to ourselves, relatively new build as well. It's the 90s. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different buildings, different facilities we have. So Rana, perhaps you'd like to talk about UCL East and explain the exciting things that we have there.
Yeah, so as Kim mentioned, we moved to UCL East last year. We have amazing facility. And again, maybe we're trying to implement new strategies, which is based on interdisciplinary thinking. So we have something called a manufacturing future labs, where we have different kind of departments coming together and collaborating together to improve one task. So for example, we have in our pod, we have biochem eng, chem eng, mech eng, and chemistry, all collaborating together in order to improve our process. Perhaps Petra wants to share some of the insight of the facility, which is one of its kind that we have in the main campus.
Yeah, thanks, Rana. So in the Bloomsbury campus, which is the one in central London, our department actually owns what is known as the Advanced Center for Biochemical Engineering, the ACBE. And what really makes it very special is that this is a multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art facility that was designed for translational research. And us as a department as a whole, this is the type of research that we tackle. And this pilot plant facility, why it is so unique is because it's not a very common facility, at least not within academic settings, within universities. You would see pilot plant scale facilities more in industrial settings. We have a bioreactor that is around 100 liters, which is the pilot plant scale. We have a range of other types of smaller bioreactors, which we usually refer to as bench scale. So this can range from a couple of 100 milliliters, usually 250 milliliters to 5 liter scale. Yeah, we also have equipment, pilot plant scale equipment for downstream processing. Downstream is the recovery, the isolation, the purification stages of products. And I believe we have a centrifuge, we have a homogenizer, and also a chromatography column, all at pilot scale. And perhaps it's also worth mentioning here that in the department and our master students in particular, they have access to this pilot plant scale facilities through the pilot plant week that we organize several times a year, once for undergraduates and once for our master students. And during that week, it is intense hands-on experience working alongside PhD students, designing experiments on one of these pieces of equipment at the pilot plant scale. It could be a centrifuge, homogenizer, or the chromatography column, and then running those experiments, collecting data, analyzing it, and presenting it at the end of the day, at the end of the week, sorry. And our students tend to find this experience very unique and very useful. And the reason for that is because industrial scale equipment is not something that you will come across in academic labs, but also unless you end up working in industry, you will not have access to operating those sorts of pieces of equipment. So this can be extremely insightful. Darren, I don't know if you want to add anything about facilities in Bloomsbury.
Yeah, certainly we have, sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on. Yeah, we have the like a world-class pilot plant at the Advanced Centre for Biochemical Engineering in Bloomsbury as part of the Biochemical Engineering department. And for projects of which there are the majority, but not all, that consider industrial scale up and actual implementation, that's really without match, I would say, amongst the synthetic biology master's programs in the UK. So we have that connection between not just elegant science for elegant science sake, but actually elegant science that is compatible with translation into real world solutions. And the other thing is that at UCL, we don't insist that everyone who is a synthetic biologist all sits in the same building. So there are many synthetic biologists within our department, but there's also an array of synthetic biologists cross-cutting across many departments: chemistry, life science, neuroscience, and beyond. And we offer the MRes team are always turning over projects and always breaking new grounds with extending the projects we offer. So in essence, the whole of the UCL campus is the oyster of the MRes cohort each year, depending on which projects we manage to get in. But it's normally set, there's at least 7 departments that the projects cut across on a typical year. But at the heart, in terms of the home of the MRes, we have these scale-up facilities with large scale and small scale bioreactors for microbes and for mammalian and animal cell types. And that connection of world-class bioengineering of cells and world-class access to industrially relevant environments for which those cells will need to perform, I think is unique to UCL Biochemical Engineering and all our master's programs, including the synthetic biology MRes.
Fantastic, thank you. Sorry, there's a question that's come in. I'll just read it out because it's for Rana and Darren. Somebody completed the BEng, and yeah, so perhaps you could describe. They're asking about research projects that are available for students in the stem cell and gene therapy MSc and the synthetic biology MRes programs. Also asked if yeah, and there's some questions about sort of requirements. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll answer you directly about the requirements because it's a bit specific to you. But whilst I'm doing that, actually, if actually, I think it's really useful for everyone to have a conversation about how projects are chosen, how final design projects or research projects, depending on the program, how you do that, how they're supervised. It's something which students are often very interested in. So, Rana, if I hand that over to you, and then perhaps Darren, then Petra.
Yeah. So most of the research projects in this MSc are related to cell and gene therapy. Now, because we're kind of teaching interdisciplinary fields, we have projects that are more focused on the science, the bioprocessing aspect, lentivirus, stem cell, CAR T therapy, which is now trending, but as well as we have some business plan research projects, some desk-based like modeling as well. So it all depends on the academic, but basically because most of the teaching staff, their background is more EVs or stem cell therapy or CAR T therapy or lenti. These are the main topics, but we have as well a research project placement in industry. So it's according to the industrial partner. So we have, for example, this year, for example, we have Orchard. So Orchard Therapeutics are doing more hematopoietic stem cell field. We have PA Consulting, so it's more about business side of the cell and gene therapy products. We have Ori Biotech as well, so they're looking into how to grow the cells inside their novel biotechnology. So it really all depends, but in general, these kind of research projects are related to cell and gene therapy.
Yeah, and from just checking the question again, where's it gone? In terms of, lost it. The MRes. So the question was about the projects. There we go to the, yeah, I've got it now. So yeah, so they're quite varied. So there are projects that cut across with cell and gene therapy, lab grown meat type projects, classic synthetic biology projects, let's say, so that are similar to the metabolic pathway engineering, where you would engineer a microbe to be able to make drugs or drug precursors like artemisinin and things like that. Most of the projects give students the opportunity to use cutting edge technologies like CRISPR or Golden Gate assembly, or all these kind of assembly techniques, and certainly you learn about the theory of all those kind of techniques. In terms of the backgrounds, I wouldn't say there's an automatic disqualification. What I would say is to learn about a program, approach Jana, Petra, or I, fill out the application form, and it's on a student by student basis, and we can consider their background. That I can't obviously make any specific assurances or guarantees, but what I can say is in the past, things like if a student has a certain amount of industrial experience or broader experience after their degree, that can be taken into account if perhaps they got a 2-2 or something like that. So that has happened in the past. So I can share that information, but without making any specific promises. And that's, I think, common often to master's programs, because they can take people in from a variety of backgrounds that are converting or career pivoting and so on and so forth. So that is something that's more common, I would say, to the ethos of master's programs than perhaps your first degree.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about sort of industrial engagement at the moment. It's something which actually, if I go to you first of all, Petra, because it'd be worth explaining or saying why we've got, I think, across many parts of engineering, we've got a particular connection with industry and also with policy. So we explain about how we interact with industry, and then Rana speak to Darren about a bit about how it applies to your programs as well. So Petra, would you like to talk a bit about industrial connections?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I've realized that one thing I haven't talked about projects for the masters in biochemical engineering, and actually this is kind of linked in a way. So for the MSc in biochemical engineering, as I said, it caters for both graduates from a scientific background, but also from an engineering background. And that is through the unique feature of having separate routes. If you come from a scientific background, you'll be assigned to the 4 scientist route. If you come from an engineering background, you'll be assigned to the 4 engineers route. The 4 scientists, because the program, the MSc in Biochemical Engineering is accredited by a professional body, which is the Institution of Chemical Engineers. We do have quite specific rules, and those rules are put in place to ensure the quality of teaching, the quality of delivery, and of course, the highest level of student experience. So one of these limitations is that the 4 scientists have to do a design project in order to get that knowledge of designing a process or a piece of equipment that engineers usually have, and they usually learn through their undergraduate degrees. So through the design project, which last year, for example, the theme changes every year, but last year the theme was on vaccine manufacturing. So designing a bioprocess for manufacturing a specific type of a vaccine. And in order to acknowledge all that knowledge and information that you need in order to be able to design such a complicated manufacturing process, we support our students through giving them access to very specialized training modules, training courses. And the ones that I'm particularly referring to are the MBI training courses. MBI stands for the Modular Training for the Bioprocess Industries. And these are very unique, very intense, short training courses that have been designed, and they're actually quite unique because they've been established by our department and they are accredited by the UCL. But what really makes them unique is that they have been designed together with industry. And they're open to everyone, including externally. So a lot of the participants on these training courses will come from industry, with perhaps a small proportion, depending on the subjects, from academia, or even from regulations, from business, depending on the subject of the MBI course. And our students have access to these through the design project. I think there are 2 particular MBIs that are linked to the design project. There is a whole list of subjects that we have these training courses. I don't know, maybe Kim, you can post the link for the MBI courses in the chat if anyone wants to check out the topics that we cover. But it is a variety from cell and gene therapy focused specific to downstream processing to I think there is one on machine learning and automation and digitalization. I think that's how it's called, digitalization, etc. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything on top of that.
I think that's fine there, yeah. So the MBI, I think we'll come to industrial, sort of the way we work with industry as well. So Rana, perhaps you'd like to talk about the committee for the industrial panel for your program, and how you interact, and especially with the industry visit as well, because that's something I know is very popular with our students.
Yeah. So when we first drafted this MSc, we had industrial people on board. They told us which kind of like topics they would like to teach the students and which kind of criteria and knowledge they want the graduate students to have once they graduated. So we started with 11, 12 members. Now we have 17 members on board, and they contribute a lot. So they deliver some of the lectures, some of the workshop, and it's really good because sometimes they don't translate only the theoretical aspect, but they translate the things that are really happening in industry to the students. And this is what the students like to see. They mentor the students, so they help them throughout their career path. So most of the students, even after graduating, they don't know like the different roles, the different jobs that they can get in industry. And then one of the nice things is that we have one of the modules, which is commercialization module, where we ask the students to consider themselves kind of like a startup company, and they work on innovative things. And then they design their things, and then they pitch this as a drag and then pitch to our industrial committee to see if they will invest in their idea or not. As well as sometimes they host a site visit at their facility, so the students go and see actually how a GMP facility look like, and they deliver well. They propose some of the research project as well, and they attend the poster session, of course.
Fantastic, thank you. Darren, would you like to talk about industrial connections, please?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the routes to connection I've mentioned before, it's also worth considering within our departments, certainly within biochemical engineering, the vast majority of the staff literally have personal hands-on experience in industry, either having worked in industry or collaborated extensively with industry in terms of consultancy activities, or co-founding companies that they have a continuous involvement with. So I'm a co-founder of a company called the Clean Food Group. I'll let Petra speak to her activities and Rana in that field. But I think that personal involvement, again, is a real value add for the masters that we offer. Perhaps, again, if we contrast it with people coming from a more traditional bio or biomedical background that may not have had such up close and personal knowledge of the difference in drivers that there can sometimes be in when you consider commercial considerations versus just purely academic research considerations. So again, I think we're hardwired and connected into what industry wants through collaboration and through our own personal experiences. And again, this may not be that common. We tend to be used to it here at UCL Engineering, but it's worth being aware the actual ecosystem in which all these masters sit is one where very much 90% of the doctoral studentships are sponsored directly by companies, and the research questions they are answering are the questions that are important to companies. So the ecosystem in which these masters are embedded culture in which the master's programs are embedded is one where industry, most of the doctoral students you would interact with have an industrial sponsor and a company there. So I would probably say that that there are just many, there'll be many in companies' names and companies' research activities that you will encounter inevitably. You won't be able to avoid them if you do in all three of these master's programs we offer. There have been multiple spin-outs from UCL Biochem Eng in the area of synthetic biology. Some of you may have heard of Bento Box, which is a small portable laboratory in almost laptop-sized molecular biology lab. So people are using that globally now out in the field in scenarios in which it's actually far better to process samples and sequence them in situ in the middle of the rainforest rather than trust that you can post a sample hundreds of miles away without it degrading. So there's a technology called nanopore device where it's a small, like mobile phone size device that has this DNA sequencing tech. And the Bento box can be used to process the sample. So Bento Bio is a UCL Biochem Eng synthetic biology spin out. There's another company called Synthase, which is a synthetic biology software-based automation company, and that span out of our department. And the CEO of Synthase has taught on the MRes for the entirety of the existence of the MRes. So we've got these ongoing commitments and connections in our department, and that is so above and beyond just simply doing well at your master's. The network that you're now credibly a part of is a huge value add, I would say, for anyone thinking about doing any of our master's programs.
Fantastic, thank you. I think it'd be really good to talk as well about some of in terms of networking, some of the opportunities that are available. Dan might ask you about the SynBio network, and then Petra, you have to talk about the lab cultured, the cultured meat conference that happened last year and is planned again for this year, because they were really, really exciting. But Dan, the SynBio, something that I've been helping promote recently is a SynBio network, and that's something which is great to be at the centre of here in London. I think London particularly facilitates that.
Yeah, for sure. So much in the way that the synthetic biologists at UCL are spread across the UCL campus, just synthetic biology in London, there are many prominent synthetic biologists in all the universities in the capital. And so there's a London synthetic biology network in which postdoctoral researchers, PhD researchers, quite easily MRes researchers can give presentations all year round. So there's typically two presenters per meeting, and an opportunity to network, and so you can connect all across the synthetic biology community that spans London, and I'm sure there'll be a certain percentage as well from beyond London. But it's that cohesive community and networking that the London Synthetic Biology Network brings, and it's led bottom up. So it's not something that eminent professors organize and make the decisions on. It's actually more very early stage. So doctoral students, early career people have spearheaded the London Synthetic Biology Network from the beginning, and that's a conscious decision. The part of the network is to maintain the fact that it's early stage, and is to uplift people just starting their careers in synthetic biology, rather than perhaps another flavor of network, which would just be the most eminent scientists all the time, global stage, which can be a little bit intimidating. So this is more like welcoming and inclusive for people that are just getting in to the sector. So, and great work again from Kim and the rest of that team organizing those network events.
Okay, so I'm happy to go next. So I guess in terms of networking, UCL is extremely good at supporting its students, undergraduate, and also postgraduate students, in the sense that there is a large community within the Students' Union of UCL. And there are many societies on various topics, themes, anything. I believe there is something for everyone. In our department in particular, we have an undergraduate student society, but there's also a postgraduate student society, which is the Clark Society. They are quite heavily involved with organizing all sorts of networking events, socializing events that essentially help our students, both at the undergrads and the postgrad level, familiarize with the community, get to know each other, etc. There is also a society on alternative proteins, the UCL Alternative Protein Society, which actually is the chair is one of our PhD students in the department. And if you are interested in cultivated meat or in alternative proteins, that society is the best place, to join and learn everything. And they do all sorts of events, from bringing experts in to give invited seminars, from establishing mentoring schemes, where you can learn from someone in academia or in industry. If you're particularly interested in that. So, because we are biochemical engineers, particularly myself and a few other of our colleagues in the department. We are members of the ICHEME, the Institution of Chemical Engineers, and we are actually committee members on the Biochemical Engineering Special Interest Group. So through that platform, we get to organize a lot of networking events that essentially it's a platform for all biochemical engineers to come together and learn about the different applications, learn about the science, the new advancements in science, etc. So what Kim was referring to earlier was one of such events that we've organized through the Biochemical Engineering Special Interest Group, ICHEME, and that was a conference particularly on focused on cultured meat. It was titled Cultured Meat, A New Year on Food Bioprocessing too. And last year we ran that at UCL East. So it was a great opportunity for all of our PhD students and master students that had an interest, that either had projects in the cultivated meat space, or master students that had an interest in this space and wanted to learn more. We've opened that up to our students, of course. This year we're gonna do this conference again, but we are actually extending it to cellular agriculture. So cellular agriculture includes other types of foods, like foods made using precision fermentation, but it also includes other animal-derived products like leather. So there is this concept of cultured leather, which will be discussed, or at least covered, at least in one of the sessions at this conference. We are, this year, I don't believe we're going to be organizing it in London. It will most likely, we still haven't set up the venue, but we're in the process of discussing the venue with University of Bath. So it will probably run there. It's not finalized yet, but that's where it's kind of going towards now.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, well, we're going to be coming to the last 10 minutes of this session, so I just want to remind everybody who's joined us, if you've got any questions, anything which we've not covered, anything that you'd like to know more about, please put it in the Q&A box. We're more than happy to anything that you want to ask. Otherwise, I'll just assume that we're covering everything you want to know, which is always good to know. But I do want to take a moment to shamelessly plug that we've got some great virtual taster lectures coming up in the spring. This is something that we do every year. We do a series of lectures. Some of them are from our academics, others from our researchers. So some of Rana's postdocs, I think they're postdocs or postgrads. They're doing one on the future of cancer therapy. That's going to be Pierre and Dale. So it'll be really interesting seeing that from their point of view as two researchers. Petra's colleague Travis is going to be doing one which on dodo nuggets and T-Rex legs with a terrifying image that he created in AI. My colleagues looked at it and they were more disturbed at the fact that the cabbages were bigger than the pepper pots, but there we go. That's they were confused by some of the sizing that AI decided to do, but that's looking really exciting. We're doing one on about cell-free technology, which could have the potential to shorten the period of time that you get vaccines to market and lower the carbon footprint. So it's got potential to really have a huge impact in terms of public health. And then Dr. Leo Rios is doing one on redesigning yeast to make oils, particularly for cosmetics. So again, it's something like a combination of synthetic biology and also manufacturing, so it's scaling up. So there's some it really comes to the heart of what we do in biochemical engineering. We've got one of our winners of the 3-minute thesis who will be doing a session on mRNA, and the series is free to join. Please sign up to that. I'll put a link in the chat. But I see that we don't think we've got any more questions that have come through now. I think towards the end of it, I think it's really useful to talk about what people go on to do after their PGTs. So with your MSc or an MRes, there are two general pathways where people go to work. They're using it to further their careers, or they decide to go into academia and do a PhD. And it's interesting why some students say they're going to do this, and why other people feel they're going to do that. So Rana, if I go to you and just say the two sort of directions that people take, what kind of jobs they go into, and then maybe why they want to go and do a PhD in your experience.
I think based on the previous cohorts, and because they are exploring different kind of research area, then that's why during their MSc they would know what to do next. So some of our alumni stayed with us to do their PhD. Actually, Pierre, who's doing the taster day, was in our first cohort, and now he's finishing his PhD, which is great to see. The others, because of the different topics, some of them, even when they work in industry, we saw a variety of kind of careers. Some of them work as a scientist, some of them as process engineers, some of them as business development, some of them as project management. Even we have few students who, because of one of the lectures on IP, they decided to, after their master's, to do 1 year in law and then be specified for the IP in cell and gene therapy. So really, we saw like a diverse career path from all of the cohorts, basically.
Great, thank you. Darren, perhaps I can talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the MRes cohort, what the MRes students tend to go on to. So they all go on to pretty much stellar careers. About a third are completely outside of research. So again, the skills, training, and knowledge you get on the MRes are infinitely transferable to completely different areas. So it's not something that stereotypes or restricts your future career. It's very much a launch pad into whatever your chosen career is. Another third definitely go into the industrial bioscience area, so the commercial world of bioscience, bioindustry, and a good third go on to doctoral studentships at more often than not, very prestigious industrial studentships. Sorry, doctoral studentships. Most recently, we had so we've had some students stay in our department We've had a student go to the MRC Laboratory for Molecular Biology, which is on the UCL campus, and that's a very difficult and prestigious institution within molecular biology to get admitted to for people with top-notch pure molecular biology backgrounds globally. So that, again, I think that's a testament to the rigor and the depth of science and engineering and research training we have, cutting across these areas of molecular biology, scale up, biochemical engineering, and awareness of engineering and commercial activities. So the fact that we are multidisciplinary in this master's and all the masters doesn't mean we're not excellent across all these different areas of research, these different disciplines. So yeah, so they tend to go to those different areas. One of our colleagues did the Dr. Jack Jeffries did the MRes way back in the early 2010s, and several other colleagues, several other graduates have formed startups. There's Tim Folliard, I believe, is co-founded a startup that's out there in California. Some people go straight to the source of that startup culture. Some people have startups here. So that innovation, that entrepreneurship is in the air, I think, in the campus and at Biochem Eng. And so again, I think our students definitely feel empowered to join industry or start their own companies that have been launched from the MRes and all three of the programs. So I think it's a very rosy future for the graduates of our master's programs. So the only drawback of that, of course, is that we tend to get emails from our alumni who have gone on to very lucrative and very successful careers. So we have to ask them to not forget about us and maybe sponsor studentships and so on back where they started at their launch pad. So, but that's a wonderful drawback to have, is watching your graduates go on and just go out there and be world beaters and go on to great things.
So Petra, just before I come to you, somebody's actually come with a question asking about how does the program tailor its engineering focused modules for students from a biomedical science background? I think actually, bear in mind that all three of the programs we have make it, I think they're quite, they have roots in for people from quite diverse backgrounds. So this person's asked specifically about people from biomedical science backgrounds. So Petra, how would that work?
Sorry, the question's gone. Is it biomedical science or biomedical
Sorry,
engineering?
it's in the chat rather than the Q&A. So it's the question is, how does the program
yes,
tailor its
found it. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so for the MSc in biochemical engineering, if you come from a biomedical science background, then you will be assigned to the 4 scientist route. And essentially in this 4 scientist route, you'll be learning all the engineering knowledge and principles that you haven't learned through your own degree. And the idea is that in order to become a biochemical engineer, because it's such a multidisciplinary subject, you need knowledge and understanding from multiple disciplines. Engineering, sure, is one of them, but engineering on its own is not sufficient, because you also need knowledge from the life sciences, which is why having 2 routes is an opportunity to actually learn the undergraduates, depending on their background, to teach them those skills and knowledge that they are missing. And then at the end of the program, everyone will be on almost the playing level, where they will have all the knowledge necessary for them in order to, be a biochemical engineer. So for biomedical science, we've had students from this background in the past as well, and they've been on the 4 scientist route, and they've done absolutely great. So yeah, there's absolutely no problem.
Thank you. Darren, Rana, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm just going to ask you to just come back. Oh, whilst you do that, there's a question that's just come in, so I might have to message because we have to finish at 5 o'clock. So I'll message back in the chat. But if Darren, Rana, if you could perhaps refer to that, that'd be great.
I think this one is also for me, Kim.
Yeah,
This
I think
question.
actually that one's quite specific about their circumstances. So what I'll do in reference to that one, I'll send you my email address. Get in touch with me directly, and I'll put you in touch with Petra because it's quite specific to your personal application. So we can go into that. And so Rana, Darren, just briefly explain about different people coming in from different backgrounds for the programs. That'd be great.
Yeah. I think that shouldn't be a problem because, as Petra mentioned, when we first start our first lectures, we start from the basic and we build up. In the commercialization, for example, we had people who are coming from business side and even mechange. Actually, we had someone, but because we cover the basic of biology, the basic of engineering, they were able to catch up with everything, and they were doing fine. So that shouldn't be really a problem. Darren?
Yeah, exactly. So we have, I mean, one of the main square of time. One of the main differences is, let's say, people from an engineering or people from a computational or modeling background versus people from a wet lab background. So unlike master's synthetic biology programs that have as a stated major part of the program, systems biology and modeling, that's not at the heart of our program as a major pillar, but it is accommodated within our program. So if you are more interested in computational approaches and modeling approaches, we have the content, the core content there that you can explore further with the people that teach that content, and we have projects in that content. Similarly, but if you're not so much focused on that, or if maybe you are from a computational background but want more wet lab, certainly that's one of the major elements that we serve, would be the more laboratory based approaches. So you can think of it as, if you're interested in computational modeling, this program will accommodate you amply, and you can do projects in that, but it's not a compulsory feature of the project of the program if that's not, let's say, that's not something that you're looking to develop. So that's probably the main thing to think about when you think about this program versus other master synthetic biology programs you're thinking about. A lot of the others have a kind of very big compulsory element of systems biology, whereas with us that's more a flexible element.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of this session. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's joined us. It's been great to have you with us, and thank you for your questions. They've been really good. If you want to get in touch with us afterwards, please, if you didn't get a note of my email address, just go to the Biochemical Engineering website and you'll find contact email address there. Plenty of ways to get in touch with us. Just Google my name, it's Kim Morgan, UCL, you will find me. I'll be more than happy to put you in touch with anyone if there's anything you'd like to follow up. Otherwise, Rana and I will be in person tomorrow at UCL. I'm guessing that most people are not actually in London if they're joining online, but if you happen to be, do come down. We'd love to say hello to you. We can even give you a quick corridor tour of the pilot plant. But otherwise, thank you very much. It's been great to have you with us. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Rana. Thank you, Petra. And have a great Friday and have a great weekend. All the best.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.